Namaste. The topic of discussion today is interdisciplinary approach. In interdisciplinary approach, learners draw two or more disciplines in order to advance their understanding of a subject or problem that extends beyond the boundary of any single subject. Learners integrate and develop information, concepts, methodologies, and procedures from two or more disciplines to gain knowledge, understanding, and skills. Interdisciplinary studies involves the combination of two or more academic disciplines into one activity like a research project. It draws knowledge from several other fields, like while carrying out a study in history, it draws knowledge from sociology, anthropology, psychology, economics, etc. It is about creating something by thinking across boundaries. The term interdisciplinary is applied within education and training pedagogies to describe studies that use methods and insights of several established disciplines or traditional fields of study. It involves researchers, students, and teachers in the goals of connecting and integrating several academic schools of thought, professions, or technologies, along with their specific perspectives in the pursuit of a common task. The epidemiology of HIV/AIDS or global warming requires understanding of diverse disciplines to solve complex problems. Interdisciplinarity can likewise be applied to complex subjects that can only be understood by combining the perspectives of two or more fields. For example, the subject of land use may appear differently when examined by different disciplines, for instance, biology, chemistry, economics, geography, and politics. So, it can be said that collaboration among two or more academic disciplines to investigate a central problem, inquiry, or theme is known as interdisciplinary approach. It is the teaching and learning mode referred to the ability to relate knowledge to each other. Social history has existed in close dialogue with economics, sociology, and anthropology. Intellectual history has ties with philosophy and psychology, political science, and other disciplines. In a nutshell, interdisciplinary approach is a process of answering a question, solving a problem, or addressing a topic that is too broad or complex to be dealt with adequately by a single discipline. Hence, draws various disciplines with the goal of integrating their insights to construct a more comprehensive understanding. Interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary approach. Interdisciplinary studies are those in which concerted action and integration are accepted by researchers in different disciplines as a means to achieve a shared goal that usually is a common subject of study. Multidisciplinary refers to an additive research agenda in which each researcher remains within his or her discipline and applies its concepts and methods without necessarily sharing a common goal with other researchers. In contrast, transdisciplinary contributions incorporate a combination of concepts and knowledge not only used by academics and researchers but also other actors in civic society, including representatives of the private sector, public administrators, and the public. These contributions enable the cross-fertilization of knowledge and experiences from diverse groups of people that can promote an enlarged vision of a subject as well as new explanatory theories. Rather than being an end in itself, this kind of research is a way of achieving innovative goals, enriched understanding, and a synergy of new methods. Multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity are complementary rather than being mutually exclusive. Both interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research and practice require a common conceptual framework and analytical methods based on shared terminology, mental images, and common goals. Without specialized disciplinary studies, there would be no in-depth knowledge and data. In multidisciplinary research, each discipline works in a self-contained manner. In interdisciplinary research, an issue is approached from a range of disciplinary perspectives integrated to provide a systematic outcome. In transdisciplinary research, they affirm that the focus is on the organization of knowledge around complex heterogeneous domains rather than the disciplines and subjects into which knowledge is commonly organized. Transdisciplinarity is at once between disciplines, across disciplines and beyond any discipline, thus combining the going beyond all the processes of multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinary approaches can only be effective if there is a significant shift in disciplinary thinking. This involves a shift from disciplinary divisions, which search for the unity of knowledge, to collaborative deconstruction, which seeks coherence. Transdisciplinarity is a way of achieving innovative goals, enriched understanding, and a synergy of new methods. Several recent contributions propose that the difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary contributions stem from the Latin prefix trans, which denotes transgressing the boundaries defined by traditional disciplinary modes of inquiry. They make a distinction between the research group, which will always remain interdisciplinary by the very nature of disciplinary education and inquiry in general, which, if transdisciplinary, implies that the final knowledge is more than the sum of its disciplinary components. Interdisciplinary approach is mixing of disciplines, while disciplinary ones would have more to do with a fusion of disciplinary and other kinds of knowledge. This interpretation means that transdisciplinarity is not an automated process that stems from the bringing together of people from different disciplines or professions. In addition, it requires an ingredient that some have called transcendence. This implies the giving up of sovereignty over knowledge, the generation of new insight and knowledge by collaboration, and the capacity to consider the know-how of professionals and lay people. It is important to emphasize that multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity approaches are better treated as complementary rather than being mutually exclusive. Interdisciplinary approach is a process of answering a question, solving a problem, or addressing a topic that is too broad or complex to be dealt with adequately by a single discipline. Hence draws various disciplines with the goal of integrating their insights to construct a more comprehensive understanding. Let us here discuss relationship of history with other social science disciplines. History and political science. A historian is not merely concerned with the tracing of the history of the political process by a narration of the episodes, but he has to learn the nature of fundamental political principles and basic forms of political institution. In the view of this closeness between two subjects, the development of political institutions, rules, regulations, rights and duties, law and mode of justice, executive, legislature, and administrative functions, economic and financial implications, nature of bureaucracy, fundamental principles of state policy are all defined under the constitution of history. Diplomatic history is a specialized branch of political history which deals with the principles of international relations. Ambassadors are the links between nations, and they were custodians and practitioners of diplomacy. The issue like balance of power, Cold War, international peace, disarmament have assumed great importance in recent times. The military history is an important chapter in political history wherein wars, battles, campaigns and conquests figures very prominently. It deals with the causes of a war, strategy, war tactics, war weapons, etc. History is very helpful to politics because the political aspects is a part of the whole range of activity recorded by historian, and knowledge of history would enable the politicians to know the politics better and play their role effectively. Professor Acton has correctly pointed out the science of politics is the one science that is deposited by the stream of history like grains of gold in the sand of a river. History and economics. History is also closely related to economics, as the activities of a man in society are very closely related with the economic matters. the historian of any period must possess at least a rudimentary knowledge of economics. The role of economics in historical reconstruction has been so defined that there is an aspect of history called economic history. Economic history is an important branch of history. Its understanding is absolutely essential for proper understanding of history of any period. There has been a new orientation in our historical outlook from the days of the materialistic interpretation of history by Marx, and such class struggle, men's skill in earning, arts and crafts, trade, business and commerce, land revenue, taxes and a host of all other economic activities of the past figure very prominently in history. Therefore, a new set of economic history by the use of economic historians have emerged who try to study the economic history by the use of the economic tools. At present, history is so closely interlinked with the study of economic problems that it would not be possible to reconstruct history without knowledge of the relevant economic problems. History and statistics. In the present century, the writing of history has been greatly influenced by the statistical data. With the intervention of computers, the collection of statistical data has become possible. The historians have given up the former practice of using the inexact term like majority of historians or people, wide support, etc., and have started quoting the exact percentage of the people. With the help of the computer, processing of enormous data can be completed within a short span and systematic information can be collected. On the same line, the use of the historical demography with information regarding the movement of people, births and deaths, fertility rates, immigrations, etc. cannot be possible without the means to process and correlate the vast and complex data made available by various official records. This type of detailed investigation enables the historians to understand the different facts of the past life. A new branch called Cliometrics has come into being, according to which the use of mathematics has come into greater play in the writing of history and interpretation of the numerous sources. A good historical writing is described as A equals A plus B. A stands for the net result that flow from the historian's mind and pen. A is the statistical data and facts which he finds in the records or source. B is the interpretive and explanatory skill of historian, which are essential to make history meaningful. The proper usage of Cliometrics has resulted in what is called quantified history. History and sociology. Karl Marx was also a great historian and sociologist. Both history and sociology are concerned with the study of man in society and differed only with regard to their approach. In the recent years, it was realized that a fruitful interaction between the two disciplines was possible, and Emile Durkheim, Max Weber acknowledged the initial dependence of sociology upon history, although history too benefits from the synthesis produced by the sociologists. Sociologists exercised profound influence on the study of history by developing the certain narrow areas of human activity. They adopted the sampling techniques and developed their tools with a view to minimize the subjective element. In brief, sociology is helping history to study social dynamics, which is a study not of society at rest but constantly in social change and development. Social processes and social causation are giving a new perspective to history. History and geography. Universally, it is accepted that history and geography have very close ties. In fact, it would be practically impossible to study certain branches of history without rudimentary knowledge of geography. For example, the diplomatic or military history cannot be followed without necessary geographical knowledge or the region. Geography is one of the eyes of history, the other eye being chronology. Time and space factors give history its correct perspective. It is said it is geography that decides history. Professor Michelet was of the opinion that history was an essence found upon geography. He says, without a geographical basis, the people, the makers of history, seek to be walking. German philosopher Kant said, geography lies at the basis of history. Herder said that history is geography set in motion. There are others like American geographer Ellsworth Huntington and Ellen Semple who emphasize the importance of climate as having crucial influence on the course of history as well as on race temperament. It is a fact that many geographical factors such as climate, social, rivers, mountains, sea, coastline and mineral resources aided the development of river valley cultures as in early Egypt, Mesopotamia, India and China. Herodotus, the early Greek historian, describes Egypt as the gift of Nile. Even Aristotle and Montesquieu have emphasized the influence of climate on man. The physical formation of the countries such as Britain, Japan and Greece with broken coastlines had a very powerful impact on its history. This facilitated their naval strength and empire building activities. Similarly, the Himalayas and the jungles of Assam have acted as barriers against invasions from the north and east of India. The Himalayas and the Gobi and Mongolian deserts were responsible for the isolation of China. The geographical discoveries of America and a new route to India determined the character of world history since the Renaissance. Geography also plays an important role in the national character formation and influence the human behavior. As we know that climate of a country greatly affects the civilization of a country. Hence, the knowledge of geographical conditions is very essential for historians. It would be wise to accept the limited interpretation of geographical influence on men's conduct or on his history, so that finally it can be said it is geography that decides the history of a place. Relationship of history with archaeology. Archaeology forms a major source of historical research in the reconstruction and interpretation of past events and forms part of primary sources of data. Archaeology is the scientific study of the remnants of the past such as ancient sites, relics, monuments, coins, inscriptions and other artifacts which help in reconstructing history in the most plausible manner. Archaeology helps with the research into the prehistoric studies. The aim of this discipline is to reconstruct behavioral pattern and the material culture of the populations whose remains they were excavating. The techniques employed by archaeologists, especially in the identification of location of sites, are the aerial photography, reconnaissance survey and geophysical survey. Dating in historical reconstruction is to a large extent difficult as it was drawn from the accounts of oral tradition which were generally not precise. The intervention of archaeology through the attempt to get closely actual dates of occurrence through the science of radiocarbon dating cannot be overlooked. Even though these dates are indefinite, they have been instrumental to ascertaining years of occurrence with centuries. History tends to study economic, social and political aspects of men, while archaeology studies more of economic and social aspects. Unlike history, which draws facts from oral and written tradition, archaeological analysis is drawn from scientific observation. Archaeology has been the most useful discipline in interaction with history in determining the various stages of human civilization, that is Stone Age, Iron Age and Neolithic Age. A major flaw of this source of historical writing is that information derived from it are often not uniform. This is because the information available are sometimes accidentally discovered either in the course of farming or in the course of digging. This in turn leads to generalization and which doesn't reflect the event that had taken place in restricted areas. Next we will discuss history and linguistics. Linguistics is the study of language and its structure or the systematic study of human language. The use of glottochronology, a branch of lexicostatistics, and a study of the rate which languages change or are replaced have been useful in historical reconstruction as evident in its role of analyzing vocabulary, grammatical forms and social changes of a given language to understand its evolution, and which in turn is beneficial to historical reconstruction done through the study of migration or movement of a group. Linguistics became a historical source due to the overlap of languages. Its influence is mainly a matter of comparative and historical linguistics. The method adopted is comparative and inductive. For the object of the comparison is to reconstruct, that is to find the point of convergence of all the languages being compared. This point of convergence will be called common predialectal language. The point of historical linguistics lies not so much in finding a common predialectal language as in appreciating the overall linguistic spread of different apparently unrelated languages. A language is seldom enclosed within a clearly defined space, but most commonly overflows its own area by making relationship being sometimes imperceptible at first. A common language does not necessarily go together with racial identity, but it does give relevant information about an essential, indeed the only real unity, namely the basic cultural unity of people united by a common language, even though sometimes with very different origins and political systems. It is believed that most of these languages come from a common parentage, that is proto-language. Another technique is the study of loan words, which shows the relationship between the speakers of one language and another language from which they have borrowed. The study of loan words among language groups has also helped to improve our knowledge of culture change and contact in the past. History and paleontology. Paleontology is the study of what fossils tell us about the past, about evolution and our place as humans in the world. This science, through its human paleontology, paleoanthropology, help in the study of prehistoric human and proto-human fossils, supported by genetic science, a branch of biological science which help in genetic analysis, done through genetic and biological examination in tracing and ascertaining the trend of a family, group or society. History and psychology. Psychology is the scientific study of the mind and behavior. Psychology, just like history, is a multifaceted discipline and includes many subfields of study, such areas as human development, sports, health, clinical, social behavior and cognitive process. Some aspects study the influence of culture and society, and the analysis of role of evolution complements historical studies. Psychology is seen as one aspect of social situation explained in historical context. Psychology complements history in analyzing the motives and actions of man and societies. The role of psychology in historical writing of biography and autobiography is unequivocal. The impact of psychology on history is evident from the fact that in the past, historians inquired primarily into the origins of war and ignored the result of war. And as a result of the influence of psychology, historians have undertaken the study of results and impacts of war and can further help determine the role of masses in such wars and revolution. Effects of events such as war and natural disaster on the citizens of a geographical space is best understood through the help of psychoanalysis of the inhabitants, residents of the affected and neighboring community. History and anthropology. Sociology and anthropology are the nearest to historical preoccupations, just as archaeology. Anthropology, being the study of the origins and development of people and their society, enables historians to understand the cultural pattern and behavior of primitive people belonging to different races. In tracing the course of social and cultural revolutions of prehistoric and post-historic man, the knowledge of and the help of anthropology as a related discipline to history is cogent, as it helps with precise assertions. Anthropology helped to provide insights into features of the past which were so strange that modern historians had found them difficult to comprehend or examine. Complex rituals, blood feud, trance and ecstasy, millenarism, oath-taking, the divine right of kingship, and particularly magical and witchcraft beliefs became legitimate and fruitful topics for study. Also, anthropological works also had the effect of distancing the familiar, making historians aware that much of what they had regarded as normal in the past really required investigation because it was cross-comparatively unusual. A particularly striking example of this was in the field of family relationships. Much of anthropology is concerned with kingship and marriage. These works help to stimulate many of the studies of sexuality, marriage, childhood, parental ties, domestic groups, women, love, incest, and other topics. The anthropological inspiration joined up with interest from historical demography and women's studies and thereby opened up the whole field of interpersonal relationships and sentiment. Historical research into many other topics was stimulated by anthropological inquiries, conflict, ceremony, work discipline, time, space, myths, folklore, style and fashion, oral and literate culture, birth, death, dreams, suicide, animals, and many other subjects were investigated. The formal historical documents usually conceal such topics so that it was largely under the pressure of anthropology that a vigorous development of the study of past, mentality, and emotional structures took place. Anthropology stresses the independence of spheres, the overlap of economics, politics, religion, and kingship, which have superficially been separated in the modern industrial world. Anthropology has analyzed the workings of three of the four major forms of human civilization, namely hunters and gatherers, tribal and peasant societies. For the understanding of a past which may have features of these types of social organization, anthropology has proved an irreplaceable guide. So we can say that the role of interdisciplinary approach to the interpretation and documentation of men's development is unequivocal. Social history has existed in close dialogue with economics, sociology and anthropology. Intellectual history has ties with philosophy and psychology, political science and other disciplines. If you want to know more about any other topic in history, kindly leave it in the comment box so that I can come back with it. If you have liked the video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.